Welcome, everybody. This is Heather with the New England Museum Association. Welcome to our April lunch with Nima, and I'm going to have a hard time talking today. Great. I just want to get you guys going on the chat feature, so if you could say where you're calling from to let us know that you're online and also that you can hear me. The chat feature is actually where you're going to be asking any questions that we have for our presenter today, so get you guys going on that one. And I know we have a bunch of people on the call today. Wonderful. Looks like we have a broad range here. Okay, now that you guys are familiar with the chat feature, this is actually going to be the way that you guys are going to communicate with me, with Pradeep. BJ Larson's also on the call helping us here at NEMA. So if you guys do have questions, just type them in on the chat feature and I will interrupt and politely ask them, or we can also wait until the end to ask the questions. So I'm actually going to let Pradeep take over. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company before we start, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you so much, Heather. And lovely to be lunching with everyone from the museum world this afternoon. It's a lovely day. It's a little bit cold, but happy to do this. First off, my name again is Pradeep Aradhya, and I run a company called Novus Loris. And let me know that you can actually see my website. Heather, I'm going to rely on you to tell me that you can actually see my desktop.
Yep, I can see the desktop.
Excellent. So the company that I run is called novusloris.com, and we're in 3 areas. The first is business strategy and sheer growth. The second is digital strategy. And the third is we make investments on other smaller companies and help them grow. So you might ask me, what the heck am I doing here today on this webinar talking to museums? And my answer to that is a while back, as an immigrant, I'm from India. And as an immigrant, I go back to India, once in every 3 or 4 years. And every time I go back, I find that India has become yet more modern. And a lot of things that I valued way back in my childhood are just disappearing. And there's not a good way for some of those things, artifacts, and even historical buildings to be preserved in India. And at that point, it became really important to me personally to aid in the preservation and ability for those things to be seen and enjoyed by people. And I'm here, I'm not in India, so then I started looking at the museum space here. And I found a number of interesting things, and it became clear that a company like mine could probably provide some interesting things for the museums here. And hence my interest, and primarily our focus has been to, number one, educate and help museums, and to really sort of help you guys jump into the digital age, if you will, which is our core strength. To that end, what I wanted to do today was to, number one, look at your core audience and what is going to become your core audience in the near future, understand how they behave a little bit, help you understand what you can do. And we've done this in other areas, not just museums. We've done this for food. We've done this for financial services companies. And when you look at millennials particularly and how they behave, we wanted to be able to sort of provide museums with the expertise that we have in other spaces. And hence, we spoke with Dan and Nima, and we became members, and here we are hosting this webinar to basically help you and potentially give you the tools to jump into this new digital age. With that said, maybe what I can do is to switch over to our presentation. So there's a lot of material here, and I'm probably going to just completely jump over some of the finer details, but the material will still be hopefully available to you after the webinar if indeed you want to sort of go through it. So today we're going to be focusing on millennials, collections that you might have in your museums, and the digital outcomes that bring you the outcomes, the strategic growth that you want. So what are we going to actually talk about today? First off, we have to really examine who we're trying to address and whose attention we're trying to capture and how they behave. What is their deal? And we'll talk a little bit about some of the measures that we've seen work across digital in other spaces and that are very relevant to here as well. We did a fairly comprehensive analysis of museums and how they behave on digital, and I'll tell you what digital means to me in just a second. And we came up with a set of common problems that we saw and some measures that you can take to remedy those problems. And I think one of the biggest things that the two biggest things that we saw was, number one, there's not a comprehensive strategy. There's a lot of point solutions, a lot of players who want you to adopt their point solution, but nobody's sort of educating the museum space on a comprehensive strategy. And two, because there's no strategy, there are no tools that allow you to sort of do all of these things as well. So the hope is that this webinar sort of familiarizes you with some of that and starts to give you and make available to you tools that you can actually use, that, I'll say it outright, that you can afford to start getting into this digital age. So with that said, I'm going to jump straight in. This was a really interesting picture to me, and if you Google "I get it," you'll probably find it in various places. But this pretty much summarizes the millennial. If in your life you have a millennial who is running around doing a lot of things, you know for a fact that most of the information that they gather and many of the communications and tasks that they accomplish are done on the little devices. In fact, if you have someone a little bit younger, say in the teen age, you probably know that having a conversation is incredibly difficult because they will not look up from their devices. They will even go to gatherings. I've seen teens gathered around the table, and all they do is they don't talk to each other. They focus on their phones and do whatever. So this has unfortunately become the sole means of reaching these folks. If it's not on their phone, they don't get it. And that's primarily what you have to sort of combat or take on if you're going to reach these millennials, because they gather their information, they run their lives based on the little devices. But that doesn't mean that that's all they do. So whether it's just the millennials or a broader audience that you're trying to take on, the world has increasingly become digital. So we kind of define digital as a combination of web presence and mobile presence. In fact, if you need to maintain a different web and mobile presence, then that's a harder task. So you really want to be able to try and combine them into one digital presence if you possibly can. So whether you're trying to drive your brand and bring about interest and engagement on the part of people who will visit your museums, on the part of volunteers who will come and volunteer at your museum, or whether you're trying to drive dollars to your museum via donors and other development efforts, making the information and what you provide on your museum super accessible is up to you. And that's central to be able to sort of drive all those goals. And again, doing that by simply taking out a social media campaign or printing flyers or doing just an email campaign is a point solution. It's a one-off. It doesn't cover all your audiences. It definitely doesn't cover the behavior of the different audiences that you want to address. So what you really want to do is to understand who that audience is, how they behave, and provide hopefully one digital presence that caters to everything. And unfortunately, because things are digital, things move awfully fast in this world. People get very bored if they come back to the same information more than once. To be able to change that and to keep them engaged is very, very important, and this is a big part of digital strategy. So what you really want to do is to design that presence, implement it, measure whether it's bringing you the outcomes that you want, and then you want to refine that, and you want to try and do that in a cycle. Does that sound expensive and like a lot of effort? Probably yes. If you have the right tools, it's not. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So just to emphasize how this digital world works one more time, there are many ways to manifest a digital presence. You can say, this is my museum, this is what I have in it, and this is how I describe these things, and that's what I have. On the other hand, the people who visit your museum for whatever their purpose might be, entertainment or to explore and donate, whatever those intentions might be, if you do not cater explicitly to those intentions on your digital presence, they are not going to visit you. They will not find something interesting when they land. A lot of people won't come back. They won't bring their friends. So it's a downward spiral. So you really want to find this nexus where what you want to put out for your museum and what the visitor intends to do, there's a happy medium. There's an intersection where you can provide information that they need. You can make that information easily shareable, and you can provide whatever other customer services that they might want or guidance they may want in a nice, easy experience. And that's the core idea that will help you succeed in this new digital world. So what I wanted to do was to give you one mantra. If you want to drive those outcomes, if you wanted to bring in more visitors, more donors, and drive more dollars, then what you have to do is to facilitate that visitor's intent. And you can do that. You can do that for different kinds of visitors on the same digital presence, and that's what we're going to talk about next. What I first want to jump in and sort of dispel is give you a couple of examples of the tools that you could use. And I wanted to show you, we'll talk in detail about the aspects of these experiences in just a second, but I wanted to show you that some of these things are pretty easy and that they're very inexpensive provided you go to the right places. So one of the first things that my company did when we said that we should take an interest in this space is we built out experiences, digital experiences that work very well. And I want to take you to those for just a second. Heather, hopefully you can see this.
Yep, we're moving along to your website here.
Yep. Can you see something called the National Museum?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So this is not an actual museum website. This is something you'll notice you can actually go to this on your devices yourself. You can see it on your desktop or your mobile phone, and it will behave very well. So this is a sample website. It's got various things on it. I won't walk you through too many details here. I just want you to see that this is a more or less complete website. And you can actually navigate through it very, very easily. The first thing that I want to show you is that this is a full screen website. This is not one of those websites that looks like, say, this thing here, with the skinny content and the ridiculously large numbers of large amount of text that's too hard to read. Even this website, which is a little bit better and has more pictures, still has this, I have a shelf in the middle of my wall and big bare spaces on the edges of these shelves. And this is a much glitzier web experience, if you will. And what is really interesting about this is that when I go down to, say, the size of a mobile phone, the same website behaves very, very nicely. Let me show you what happens. So let's go back to this bad site, which is already kind of skinny. And I'm going to minimize my screen so that I'm down to the size of a mobile phone. And the moment you do this, you have a vertical scroll. But if you wanted to sort of view this entire sentence, then you're forced to scroll sideways. Put this kind of experience in front of a millennial, and they're not coming back. And this is a problem. So the first thing that you want to do is to have a single experience that allows somebody on any device to view it conveniently. So this was our sample website, and I'm going to minimize this as well. And now we're down to cell phone size, and everything still fits. There is no horizontal scroll bar. You can read everything without having to scroll horizontally. You would do your natural up and down scrolling like you would on a cell phone. So this experience is pre-built to behave like this. You don't have to sort of build a secondary mobile app or any of that nonsense and spend extra to do this. Another thing that I want to point out here is that digital experiences can be very engaging provided you use the right sorts of things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click Explore. When I do that, it takes me to an interactive guide. So here is a map of the museum. And again, this is a sample, and it's not as populated as a full museum might be. But if you came on to this interactive guide, and again, go ahead, click on this on your mobile phones. If you're following along, you'll find that it's still available to you on a mobile device. And you can actually, there are 3 hotspots here that you can click into, which kind of denote exhibits at these places in the museum. And you can click into one. And here you are. You have a lovely experience. It's about John Farrington's Forest Invader. Again, this is a nice video. Videos are very hot. People will always prefer viewing a video to reading text, but you have both here. And then if you wanted to really exploit the digital web, you can provide a way for them to search and learn more about this particular subject matter. So all of this is already built into this web experience. All you have to do is to take your content and replace the content that exists here. And again, just to sort of demonstrate, if I took this down to mobile application size, your content still fits nicely. There's no need for horizontal scrolling. You can still see all the content. So that's the idea here. What I want to also do is take you to a second museum experience that we built, just to show you that these things are possible. Again, both of these museum experiences, and they're linked in the presentation that is being shown, are pre-built. All you do is potentially swap out content for yours. And these are just 2 examples. We have a number of other what we call templates for these museums that you can readily use that are very inexpensive. Nobody's going to charge you for coding them from scratch like you might get if you put this out on the market. Again, easy to use and readily available to you. So coming back to our presentation here, what I want to next take you through is a bunch of problems with the average digital experience. If you do not pay attention to some of these aspects, what will eventually happen is that some parts of your efforts to gather more visitors, more donors, and more dollars will fail. This past year at the NEMA conference, we saw some very good examples of people who've sort of put in solutions for specific parts of this overall landscape. I saw particularly a fantastic social media effort on the part of the Portland Museum of Art, and they made a presentation, and that was fantastic. Do they have an overall strategy for digital? I did not really hear that, but I don't know whether they do or not. But what we wanted to make sure that you heard today was that in order for you to succeed at a digital presence and grab all those millennials, you have to sort of take on these 7 aspects at least. And we'll go in a little bit of detail into each of these aspects, but what I also want to emphasize is that there's an order in which you should take on these challenges. If you just did one of them, or if you did them in the wrong order, you would not be able to gather as much attention to yourself. So first off, in order for a lot of things to happen, you've got to drive a lot of traffic to your digital presence. But then, if you drove a lot of attention and people to a digital presence that potentially looked like this, chances are they're not going to come back. So it behooves you to create a digital presence that is genuinely engaging before you drive all that traffic. And hence, we have what we're trying to do here. So the first thing you want to take on is that you want to make your website or your digital presence, which is also your mobile presence, very engaging. Do not make it text-heavy. Do not make the navigation difficult. Make sure that whatever the visitor is coming in to find is readily available. And this is the first thing you want to do. Once you've created a website or a digital presence that does that, at that point you can say, now I'm going to drive a lot of traffic to myself, and therefore I will find people coming in, people donating, et cetera, et cetera. And there are many ways to drive that traffic to yourself. The most expensive way is to buy ads in papers or on TV, et cetera, et cetera. And that's, unfortunately, we've been in the digital business and the ad business for 20 years now. And we know for a fact, even though we sell that stuff, that there's a very small percentage of people who actually catch the ad and because of that ad find you. Our experience says that search engine optimization is the best way, the cheapest way to get there. And I'll tell you about why that is when we talk about search engine optimization in just a second. Search engine optimization is the best way to do it. It has the lowest customer acquisition value. It has the highest lifetime value for the customer to you. So do it with SEO. Once you've got a great engaging presence, once you've driven a lot of people to your website, once they land on your website, if you do not actually prompt them to take some sort of action, they will do nothing. They will come, they will look, they'll go, and then they will leave. So calls to action are very, very important. So having the appropriate calls to action at various points on your website is very important. That's number 3. After that, you want these people who found you and enjoyed you to keep coming back. So the way to do that is to personalize for them. You give them accounts. You give them things that you know that they're interested in so that they know to come back and enjoy it some more. And that's number 4. If you've done all of those 4, the last thing you want is to make all the people that you've caught bring in their friends. And the way you do that is with social. You provide ways for the content that you have on your website to be shared, to be enjoyed. You provide ways for the people that you caught to look fantastic because they know you. And that's how you use social to genuinely expand your network of followers, expand the number of people who will come visit you and donate to you. If you did all of these 5 things, how do you know that your efforts are actually working? Sure, you might find that there's an uptick in visitors. You might find that there's an uptick in dollars. But you don't know at what points of this process you're potentially losing a lot of people. You don't know whether your website is genuinely engaging. You don't know whether the calls to action that you put in are actually calling them to action. So you really, really need to sort of track what's going on your website, ensuring that at each step of these measures you've taken, that the maximum number of people are progressing to the next step and you are achieving the conversions and outcomes that you wanted. So having some sort of analytics, understanding what those analytics tell you, and really sort of getting to a point where you act on those analyses is super important. The last aspect is, again, something that we talked about just now. If your digital presence forces mobile users to say, I don't like this, you have a problem. So ensuring that your digital presence is visible and easily accessible on any manner of device is super important in this day and age. So I'm going to sort of really walk through some of these aspects in a little bit more detail very fast. So bear with me. Again, in regards to the number one thing, engagement, you want to have nice engaging content. You do not want to have very small text like this. And the best thing that you can do, you can put up pictures, but the best thing you can do is put up video. Video is king. Everybody goes for video. So what I want to do is to very briefly take you to an example of such a website that we've seen. So this is the Tennis Hall of Fame. I'm going to refresh it here for a second. Hopefully everybody can see the Tennis Hall of Fame. And I actually called you here this afternoon to watch this tennis match with me over lunch. I'm kidding. I'm not going to make you watch tennis. But the fact that you have Roger Federer and his serving action available to you in video makes this a very sticky site. It's very engaging. You're going to come back to this. You're going to tell your friends to come back to this and see it. What I also want to point out is, per our previous thing, this is a full screen website. Navigation for all the things that you want is very simple. And, it doesn't have a lot of text forcing you to read. It just says, here's some hot stuff that you probably are interested in, and you can go on and sort of see whatever you like to see. So that's a nice example of a nice, engaging website, and you really want to sort of plan for something like this when you put up your website. So I'll skip over this next slide in the interest of time, but on here are a number of measures and a number of examples of websites that do some of these aspects very, very well. So when you get this document later on, feel free to look at this, understand it, and talk about it a little bit more. I'll only talk about one thing. The bounce rate and the number of pages per visit on your website are incredibly important. Most museum websites that we've seen have a bounce rate of 70%, which means that 70% of the people who come to the website leave immediately. That is a website or a digital presence that is not working for that particular museum. If 70% of the people who find you leave you, that's time and expense on your part thoroughly wasted. If they do not view more than at least one or two pages, that's again a website that is not working for you. And measuring that bounce rate and sort of trying to reduce it, a good bounce rate is somewhere in the 20 to 40% range. And if you don't have that bounce rate, if it's higher than that, your website needs a makeover. Okay. So moving on to search engine optimization, also called SEO. The reason that SEO is the best way to drive traffic to your website, and we'll look at an example very shortly, is when you start to think about how people actually go ahead and find the things that they want to do. They go out with an intent, they're already interested in something, and then they type in a search that causes a search result to be brought up, and then they click on one or two of those results to explore. So you don't have to tell them this is what we have, are you interested? They're already interested. You just have to make sure that the things that they're searching for are connected to what you have. And that's what SEO is all about. And this is the reason that it has the lowest customer acquisition cost. If you spent money acquiring these customers or visitors with ads, you'd spend a lot more money. Moreover, because they've found you and they like you, they're kind of loyal to their own efforts, so they keep coming back, which is why the lifetime value of that customer or visitor to you is higher if they got to you via SEO. And there's some very key aspects to SEO. It's important that you use keywords in your content that visitors are using. You can definitely describe what you have with the jargon that you have, But if you find a way to make sure that you use the words that people are interested in, those searches will bubble up your landing pages, and those visitors will come to your web pages. And that's really, really important. One, have the right keywords according to what the visitors intend. Two, have landing pages that are dedicated to those particular keywords. So I'll show you a great example of exactly that in just a second. In order for your search engine ranking to be high, you have to do two other things. You have to make sure that a lot of pages link in, and when you go on those other pages, they link to your landing pages. That drives up traffic, and the search engine believes that you're the best place to take its users when they search for something. And you have to adopt some standard coding practices. The examples that I showed you earlier, where we had built templates, already adopt those coding practices. So, and those coding practices are pretty complex, so I won't go into those. But they already adopt them, so you don't have to do too much there. So, what is a good example? Let's go and look at the web and actually make a search. So let's pretend that for a second, and I preloaded the search just to show you. Let's pretend that you have an interest in Kenneth Paul Block, and you run the search on Google. And what you find is that the very first search result that comes up is Kenneth Paul Block, Museum of Fine Arts. And when you click into it, here you have a page dedicated to Kenneth Paul Block. And it's got some examples. It's got his biography. This is what we call a landing page. It's a part of the main website. Notice also that the URL, we call this a canonical URL, is very short. It has Kenneth Paul Block in the URL, so search engines believe that this is not a junk page. This is about the best page that someone searching for Kenneth Paul Block should be led to. So this is a great example of SEO practice. What you want to be able to do is to, set up landing pages like this to drive traffic to your particular museum digital presence. Right. Again, there are other. There's a breakdown of these aspects and some examples. Feel free to look that over. What I would next want to talk about is calls to action. So we talked about why calls to action are necessary. One caution here, you can definitely have calls to action that are way too many. A jumble of calls to action or buttons to click is not going to help you either. Having it just right, just appropriate, just enough to spur the actions you want is super important. And a great example of that is here at the Colby Museum. And so we'll go to the home page for the Colby Museum. And what you see is this. These calls to action are very clear, front and center, connect, visit, etc., or explore. Here's the exhibitions, collections. There's absolutely no ambiguity about this. There's no overloading of do this, that, and the other. It's very simple. This is a fantastic example of having calls to action that spur your visitors to do the right things. Cool. So, again, with calls to action as well, there's a number of aspects you want to think through. These are your aspects. Here are some examples. Go ahead and look at it at your leisure. What I want to next look at is personalization, and just as everybody is human, but even golf balls tend to be dedicated golf balls, and they tend to have idiosyncrasies, preferences, what have you. And you have to be able to cater to all of them. And if you did this on an individual basis, you'd tie yourself in knots. So what you really want to do is to group your visitors and your donors and say these are kinds of visitors, kinds of donors, and you understand them at that level. What are each of these segments of visitors or donors? Who are they? What do they want? How do you identify them? And how do you assign segmentation so that you can provide experiences on your digital presence that are relevant? Once you've done that, you can do everything from giving them accounts and wish lists and a voice to say something on your website to incentivizing their return by giving them some freebies, recommendations, shorter paths to what they want to do, help them save images that they like, help them share things, et cetera, et cetera. And let me show you some great examples of that as well. So what I want to take you to is the National Museum of Liverpool. And when you come to the homepage, the experience that you see here is this fantastic, highly colorful experience, which clearly says this is a museum with all of these things. But the Museum of Liverpool has also identified that a number of their visitors and a number of parents who come to their museum like to bring kids. So they actually pulled off a coup. Down in the bottom corner here, they have this kids-only thing. Watch what happens when I click it. The entire museum completely switches. Your experience now is a kids experience. The things that are offered here are oriented towards kids. And you've essentially provided a different path on the same homepage for kids and what they're interested in. This is called personalization. Different segment of visitors, adults versus kids, different segments, different ways to engage them and keep them with you. What I also want to show you is the Art Institute of Chicago. The Art Institute of Chicago does an excellent job of inviting people to, number one, become members. And the moment it does that, it says, here's all the different membership levels, and I'm able to, as a member, give you this, that, and the other. And all of this information is readily available. It's not just become a member, there'll be some benefits, or here's 2 or 3 benefits. Everything is completely, transparent, easily displayed, probably cut into various levels of membership because they know what people do at their museums. And this is all easily available so that you can quickly decide which one you like. So this is a great way to make sure that personalization on your website is actually working. First, ensure that the different segments and what they're interested in is visible easily. Second, give them accounts so that they can save or do whatever else they think is relevant. So the last aspect that we're going to talk about very briefly is social. Where do your visitors play? What networks? Facebook, Twitter, where else? How do you cultivate them? How do you empower them to become your enthusiasts and spread the word about you? And how do you make sure or even attempt to spread some virality? And a good example is again, the Colby Museum. I'm going to take you back there for just a second. So if we click into one of the current exhibitions, and what comes up is this particular page from the London collection. And right up top, you can share. And let's say you wanted to share this on Twitter. Watch what happens. First off, it gives you a link to this page that you can share, and then it highlights something that you want to do. And it allows you to spin this as a person, right? So if I was a silly millennial, I might say, London photos are the bomb. So what I've essentially done is I've put my spin on it, and I've managed to look cool while sharing your content. This is the essence of virality. Providing this kind of ability is super important on your website. Let's see what happens if we decide to share this on Facebook. On Facebook, with a little bit more space, it actually allows you to share a picture as well. And this is super important. Having this ability, having your visitors able to do this quickly is essential for them to engage their networks with you and bring a lot more attention to your museum. Cool. Again, there's many different aspects here about social that you can sort of look through, but I'm going to take...
Pradeep mentioned that the social part of it, there's actually sites that will come up with those links for you, so you don't have to manually do all of them. We just actually did that with our journal where we added the share button, and so the site will share and it will continuously bring in new social media things because things are popping up all the time and stuff like that. So that's like an easy button to put on because someone else has already created it for you.
Correct. Yep, there's any number of ways to do that, and what you want to do is to take on a tool that has all of that integrated already.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
right.
Sorry.
So, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's all I had to say.
Okay. All right. So one of the last aspects that you want to really think through is where are your visitors coming from? Are they going to your homepage and exploring exhibits or donor pages or things like that? How many of them are coming through? So if you look at the flow of traffic here, this is a Google Analytics report. It says organic search provided a number of visitors. They landed on the homepage. And then this red thing says a number of these visitors just left. A few went to the next stage, and then at that stage as well, a few fell off. Each of these drop-offs is something that you have to address. This gives you, if you have analytics, it gives you, number one, the ability to say there are drop-offs. Number two, you can kind of either guess or ask survey questions on the website to say, why are you leaving at this point? And that will give you insight as to whether your content is working or whether the sequence in which you've laid your pages out is working. And it really sort of drives the reduction of these drop-offs, if you will. And a great example of that is here. Oops, I have to switch tabs. A great example of that is the Linden Place, and that is this guy. And what I want you to do is to just wait for a second while this changes. And this doesn't even look like a website. Just the fact that this experience is doing this and conveying something genuinely pretty and enjoyable will make people pause. And then if you wait for one of the pictures, a clear sense of here's a great place to have a wedding emerges. And sure enough, if you actually scroll to the bottom at this point, you're curious. You have weddings, you have museum history, and you have events. And again, like before, you have all of these social media share buttons available. What I want to point out to you is when you look at the source page of this particular website and you look at analytics, so you search for analytics, there are 4 instances where analytics is involved. So somebody has put in Google Analytics on the pages in 4 different places, and they're tracking where you're going. So I will bet you that this particular layout of the website, which is very clean, very attractive, and with very few options that are no confusion whatsoever, came about as a result of people sort of understanding the flow through their website, understanding what is genuinely valuable to their visitors, and then saying, okay, this is how we should build a website. So this website has resulted from understanding flow, changing the website, making it this good. And that's what you have to do with your digital presence as well. I will skip over this last bit here in the interest of time, which is about mobile and making sure that your digital presence is available and easily readable on any device at anywhere at any time. Your millennials aren't sort of sitting down at their computer to explore you. They hear about you, they take out their phones, they try to find you, and they're either loving you or frustrated by you. So you make your choice. And building one presence is the best thing that you can do. Okay. Doing all this is absolutely fantastic, but it's not that simple. What you really want to do is find a way to take all of the fabulous information and data that you have in your collections and put that out on the web. And one asks, when you look at the collection of museums in New England, one asks, why is it that a lot of them don't have their entire collections on the web? And we found that it's because you probably fall into one of the latter two columns of this particular thing. So if you're a large museum, you have large budgets, you have large collections, you probably have premium collection software, which do allow you to publish. Whether you use that publishability for the web or not, those collection software do publish for you. In some cases, maybe you're not so large, maybe you don't have such large collections, maybe you haven't bought the best collections management software. For whatever reason, you're not really sort of integrated with the web, you cannot publish that easily, and you're worrying about how to do that. For the majority, there are a bunch of small museums who cannot afford this hot collection software or do not do it for whatever reason, and you have really no options. You cannot get to the web, much less mobile. Some of these larger museums will actually spend the money and say, I have a separate mobile experience. That's completely unnecessary money that is probably not well spent. What you really want to be able to do, and here's the need that we identified, to integrate whatever you're putting your collections in, whether it's a collections management software, whether it's just a raw database, or even just a spreadsheet. You have to be able to take that content and push it out to the web seamlessly and quickly. And you have to be able to do that on the cheap. So these templates that I showed you, the demo that I'm about to show you, which allows you to take content and collections in a spreadsheet and publish it to the web seamlessly and make that a mobile-capable digital presence, you can get to those tools for as little as $50 to $100 per month through us. Maybe other places as well, but nobody that has the full-on understanding of digital and the solutions built in that we do. So there will be some setup costs. You can't get to a website of this sophistication just for $50 to $100 a month. There will be some initial setup costs, which is the case by case. But otherwise, for the publish that I'm about to show you, and here's where we give you that demo, we will be able to sort of accommodate you at such a nice low price, which is what we wanted to do for the museum world. So the demo that I'm going to show you is very simple. Here is the back end, if you will. This is the front end. This is how the museum template that I showed you earlier works. This is the front end. This is what your website visitor will see, and this is how you handle it from the back end. So you can basically log in, and just to make things easy and convenient, I put here two collections, a painting collection and a photography collection, which are just for example.
Pradeep,
and I'm going to show you here.
Pradeep, it didn't flip over to the demo.
My apologies, I probably didn't get to the right tab.
Okay.
All right. Can you see the National Museum now?
Yep, it's good now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Nope.
I forgot to switch to the other tab. So this is the front end, and this is the back end where you edit. And at the top you have this again, and then at the bottom you have a bunch of collections that you're trying to edit. So what I want you to note here is that there's a painting exhibits and a photography exhibits collection. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the spreadsheet. Can you guys see my spreadsheet here?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to upload two more exhibits. We're going to pretend that whatever your collections might have been, they're in a spreadsheet or a database, but you can get them into a spreadsheet if you like, which is the lowest common denominator, which probably most of the museums might have now. So if your spreadsheet kind of looked like this, and for the sake of demonstration, we put in two new exhibits. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. I'm going to hit import. I'm going to go into exhibits. And my file is called exhibits templates, so I'm going to choose that file. and I'm going to hit import. And it says it's created 2 pieces of content, and if I go and look at this, the content that I've just created, I've got 2 pieces of content that are brand new, and I'm just going to, for the fun of it, publish them. Publish selected content, update. Excellent. So if I go back to the home page where I was earlier on, I've got 2 more exhibits. And if I click into this, I can view the exhibit that I've just uploaded from my collection. And I can edit it as well. And just for fun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to make a change in the exhibit. This is actually a photograph, and I'll make that a photograph now. So let me edit that. And classification is photograph. I'll hit save. If I go back here, now the photograph has been, what was here is now moved down here. It's a photography exhibit. So all this says to you, and if you look at each of these things, again, they're completely accessible via mobile as well. It's all inbuilt. You basically went from a spreadsheet where you held your collections to a full-blown glitzy website that is easily editable, that is mobile compatible, and all of this for the whopping sum of perhaps $50 to $100 a month. So that was the demo that I wanted you to sort of quickly look at. Here are other parts of this digital presence that I think are very valuable to look at. The moment you have a digital presence, you can exploit that digital presence for a number of things. Because you have the entire web at your disposal, you can extend and enhance the museum experience in very engaging ways. You can dispense with museum guides. I already showed you how you could create an interactive museum guide like this with hotspots that lead you to dedicated pages. I already showed you how you can take existing content that you already have or add on with searchable content from the web because the web is at your disposal. What I didn't tell you was that this is a direct feed. This part here on that page where we clicked in here was directly from Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is free. You can just pipe it to your website and you can have professionally, well, Wikipedia content on your website directly without having to sort of rewrite that content yourself if that's something that you want to do. The point is simply this. Because you're digital, you can extend that experience. You can be a little bit greener and not have to sort of maintain, museum guides in printed format. You can reduce the maintenance because all of this content is now in one place. You edit it in one spreadsheet or one website, and you can sort of print it directly from there, or you can send it out in email. You don't have to edit it over and over again. This makes you a little bit more efficient. The more important thing is that because you have these glitzy experiences, you can actually make some extra revenue. Perhaps people want a digital guide. You can charge them an extra $1 or say, make a donation, we'll give you access to more content at the museum. We can give you an interactive guide specifically for you. This is an excellent way to sort of extend that experience and increase your revenue and delight your donors and your members. So you don't want to sort of come at this in different stages. You want to build a digital presence that allows you to do all of this in one shot. And again, this is relatively inexpensive provided you know what you're doing and you have a partner like Novus Loris. So that's all I have for you today. We have 3 minutes for questions, but I'm happy to stay later if anyone wants to. And I hope this was useful. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Pradeep, thank you for this one. I know definitely with if you guys do have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat feature. I know looking at our website and stuff like that, there's some modifications that I'm thinking about now, and for some reason our most looked at page is NEMA jobs, and everybody leaves after that, so I'm trying to get them more involved on our website.
Cool.
It looks like people are kind of quiet today, so you did cover quite a bit. As Meg mentioned earlier in the chat feature, that the session was recorded, so you guys can look at that later on, along with the PowerPoint presentation. I know you gave a lot of examples of museums here in New England and not so further afield and stuff, so that was great. Except the Museum of Bad Art. I kind of like that museum for its, uniqueness, but it's my local theater, so.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you very much, Nima, for letting us do this, and all the folks on the phone and on the webinar. I hope this is informative. And again, there's contact information for my company and myself if you want to sort of follow up or ask more questions. We're happy to help you. We're here to help, and we're not going to charge you for answering questions.
Okay, so Mary Heath is actually from the Tennis Hall of Fame. She says thanks for including their website. And then Anne asked, how long should videos be?
Videos are all snackable. That's a great question. So videos should be snackable. Anybody, no matter how brilliant your video is, if it's more than 2 minutes, people are going to sort of stop somewhere and not really pay attention. So I would advocate taking your video, if you've got a long one, chop it up into different segments and put it in different places. If you don't have that ability, then shoot shorter videos. I think your video should say something very specific and say it quickly, and say it in an entertaining manner. So 2 minutes is probably the most you should shoot for.
And there was also just a comment about I'd like to see more modules of curatorial expansions of the hotspots. So I think that's more information on certain areas. Is that correct, Christine? Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment, Christine.
Okay, we're almost to our 1 o'clock hour. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and especially Pradeep for giving the presentation. And also join us next month in May, last Wednesday of the month. We will be talking from Jessica from the Northeast Document Conservation Center. I know we have some people typing in here. Pradeep, do you have any final words you want to say to everybody?
Nope. I hope
okay.
I hope you guys will call me or email me.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next month. Have a good Wednesday.
Bye.